So guys, we are doing a project. The colour theory work fits within a larger framework. We have been looking at some artist analysis and done some artist research. You'll have analysed some work. We're going to go on and do this now. We're going to record our analysis. We have been doing our colour theory. We're going on to some drawing, and then we're developing an outcome. So you may have done the analysis task already about an artist relevant to your work. Even if it's a different artist, you might do a little bit, even if you don't record it, of an analysis of the work of the artist we're looking at. Now we're looking at the work of Van Gogh, and in my traditional way, I have a book. I've had this book for years, longer than other books I've shown you in other videos. It's got my name written in some kind of teenage girl style. But if we look at the work of Van Gogh, we can look at some of his drawings. Look at these marks, these very expressive marks. We're going to look at some of his colour work in a moment. Let's find a page. Quite brightly coloured. But let's notice our previous observation. I've now got a very direct light on this work. Look at these marks. We saw them in the drawing, we see them again in the painting. You see them in different ways in the painting. Look on this caravan, how the lines are running across, how on this top, this fabric top, how lines are running round, how the suggestion of grass appears vertical. We'll look at this tree over here, and this fence is painted vertically. The trunk is painted with vertical marks. The branches are painted obviously following the pattern of branch work, but look at the dappling marks to suggest possibly blossom or leaves. Look at the marks on the ground, which are flat. These ones are radiating towards us. Look at this field. These little broken marks because we can see the top of the cut corn or crop, whatever it is. We can now see the side profile, and we can see this chap scything off the top, taking the top off this corn. So we can see different types of marks. Let me find us another image. This one of the church. Look at the handling of the sky. It's got swirls. I'm suggesting it's cloudy, and there's movement in the sky, maybe windy as well. The vertical wall of the church, the paint is vertical. This, where it's kind of receding away from us, the lines are going back. So this is directional line. We've seen this within the mark making and drawing work we've previously done. The pathway, big marks in the foreground, getting smaller as they go into the distance, following the natural path. Some of these marks suggesting flowers and surface. But you can see how Van Gogh uses lots of mark making. So if I was going to do an artist analysis about Van Gogh, I'd find out a little bit more about him, about biography. I know he works outside, and I know he works rapidly, and I'm going to be looking at his use of mixing and mark making. I might use words that include drawn lines, rapid marks, directional lines, bright colours, and I would apply them to the images. And I would suggest that in the work moving forward, what I was going to do is I was going to try and take the colour and mark making into my own work. Now we're going to specifically look at a series of paintings he made of sunflowers, and he made many more, but I'm just showing you these ones because you can see similarities yet variation. So you're going to look at the work and describe the colour palette. Palette, you might think, what does that mean? It means the sort of colours that we've got here. They are predominantly in the yellow orange end of the spectrum. Obviously this one's got a nice turquoise blue in the background, so they're in the warm end of the colour palette. I'm not going to talk too much about the answers to these questions because I want you to think about them. You're going to look at the brush mark making. I'm drawing things with my finger. So it's like I'm drawing onto the image with my finger. So I've drawn directional marks, small marks, dappley marks, and I want to consider where he's used those marks. I'm going to look quite closely and make decisions about how he's used them in different places. I want you to look at the three paintings and note any clear differences or things that you notice are connected between these three works. Obviously the subject matter. Now the first thing we're going to do is we are going to make a sketch based on the sunflowers. Now I'm going to get a pencil out my drawer. And I'm going to start with a little rectangular block. Why am I drawing lightly? Do you know the answer to that? Yep, it is an underdrawing. Now the vase is roughly central, and because I'm drawing at scale, same scale, I'm going to suggest the bottom of the vase is somewhere there, the top somewhere there, even though you can't see the whole thing. And the vase has a little bit of a shape like that to it. Notice rounded line, that one's flatter, that's rounded, round suggesting volume. The line that's going around it suggesting volume. I'm going to draw the top in, it would suggest volume. Now I'm drawing quite lightly, I'm going to have to press a little bit harder for you to see in the video. Harder than I would want to do if this was just my underdrawing, but it makes it clearer for you. So how on earth am I going to tackle that big complex shape? We could do that thing that we've tried with earlier work where we draw a rough shape, but I think we need to break this down. So I'm going in first of this shape here, and we've been drawing a bird. See what we did, we overdrew a shape and similar shape on there. Now above that there is a circle, dark a bit in the middle. I'm going to suggest there's another circle there. This one's a bit more spiky. Then we've got another one here. It's not touching that one, there's a gap. And this is a much spikier sunflower. Now we've got one hanging off the edge here. It's got a stem coming down and down. And it's like an ellipse, a bit like an egg. And it's got bits sticking out. Over this side, I can't even tell if that's one or two. I don't know, Van Gogh, what were you doing there? Not describing that with a lot of detail, but that doesn't matter. So I've drawn a shape. I think it's actually a bit lower, but I'm not fussed about that. I'm going to draw another shape here. I like these. See those green sections coming off? It's not touching, his is touching the boundary of the picture, mine isn't. Maybe that's because I'm not doing it right. There's another one in there. Now we've got one up here. I'm drawing the centre bit first, and then I'm putting in some of these leaves. Now we're going on to some trickies at the top. The brown bit is sort of like this in the centre, spiky bits coming off. I'm going for directional line into those, notice, so when they're radiating out in every direction. And then there's one above the one we've drawn there, facing the side, it's facing that way. I've not drawn all the stems, guys, I don't think that matters. I've constructed the main image. Now, I believe you can all do that because you've been doing a whole term of drawing, and I think you're trying to create the atmosphere of Van Gogh. Remember, there are variations. That's why I've selected this for you. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is try this solely with felt tips without the watercolours. So we're going to look for colour into here, and I'm using the chunkies. I'm going to suggest some marks, directional marks. Look at them, they're there, and I'm drawing them in here. Am I being a bit rapid and carefree? Am I being a bit Van Gogh? Right down here. Mrs. Van Gogh, the artist that cuts off his ear. Yep, that is the guy. Did he write lots of letters to his brother? Yep, that is the guy. Quite interesting character, and if you've done your artist analysis and you did it about Van Gogh, you might know a little bit more about him. So, it's dominantly yellow. Look at that technique I did in there. I did kind of like spiral shape. This is really an interpretation, isn't it? Look how I'm treating it. I think people will know that I've been influenced by Van Gogh. I'm trying to, oh, there's some yellow in there. See how my pencil marks, I don't know if you can see this. I wonder if I can zoom in. See how they're getting a little bit dirty looking? That is because the pencil is mixing with the felt tip. The tip of the felt tip is probably going to look a little bit dirty as well, if you can see that. Now you might say, but Murphy, this yellow is not the right colour. But yes, we are doing colour work. I quite like the blue background. Whether I'm going to do that, I'm not sure yet. Do you like the way I don't quite know as I've started and I'm doing a project where I'm teaching you something? There's a whole flower there I've not drawn properly. Anyway, that will do for now. So what are the colours are in here? There are greens, but I don't have any green because I'm working with solely primary colours. So where I'd be putting green, I'm just using a little bit of blue. A shadowy bit down there. I'm having a bit of blue in that. So darker bits. I'm now going into the blue. So I was doing the greeny bits first, now I'm doing the other colours. And I'm putting these dapply marks in, because remember I did my little bit of analysis, albeit little, of Van Gogh. Now, I want to build these up to look darker. And they look a bit red, so I'm now going over my brown with my red. I'm not going anywhere with a lot of red at the moment, just on its own. Look, the red's getting contaminated as well. It's a lot of orangey colours, so I'm going in for a bit of orange, a bit of mark making. It's quite expressive. Into these dapply little marks. Remember when I did my little bit of analysis? I'm not a fan of a big outline. Remember Bart Simpson, he gets mentioned more often than he should in my teaching, doesn't he? He has an outline. Not many things do. They have an edge. So see how my felt tip's contaminated now. I'm rolling with it. Oh gosh, people at school might not be happy with me contaminating the felt tips. But we're in COVID times, we are making the best of the materials we have to hand. I must have put my hand on it. Look, I'm getting smudges off the edge now. So now here we go, the fun bit. I'm putting the felt tips down. I've got my little pot of water and I've got my clean paintbrush. Now I'm going to start on a sort of easy bit here. I'm letting the water flow a bit onto the pot. And see those little marks I'm getting into it? I'm going to dapple them a bit. You might go, but it's not red, miss, it's not red. Well, it doesn't matter. Look, over here, this one's a bit redder. Roll with that one. And then I want some little marks onto here. I'm getting a little bit of the red off there. I'm going to, oh look, I'm painting with them now, little bits of red. It's quite controlled. Am I using the tip or the edge? I think that's the tip. That's looking quite muddy and dark. That's because I've got a mixture of all three primary colours, which makes a kind of neutral browny grey colour. So now I'm going to go into my flowers. If my brush is getting really dirty, I might need to go and clean it. See how I'm looking at these petals now? So Van Gogh did it with oil paint. We are doing it with some felt tips, a little paintbrush. So it's not going to be exactly the same. And what I'm actually trying to do is get rid of the white of the paper. So I will come into the background with some colour at some point. I'm going to continue playing with this for a few more minutes on fast forward. Right, so I've let that dry, because if I don't, the colours will all start merging together when I go into it now with the yellow. So I'm popping in the yellow background. If I put in the blue that I have, the blue is a little bit too dark, I think, for this image. Doesn't mean that you couldn't do it, because you're doing an interpretation. Now I can see that pencil mark where I drew in an arrow when I was drawing the construction in. Just reaching into my drawer. Rub that out. Most of the pencil lines construction I've just left in. Now, earlier on I was talking about Van Gogh's handling and mark making. This very loose vertical mark making is suggesting a background. I'm just whacking it in everywhere fairly quickly. Now, if I was doing a different artist that didn't have this style, this technique probably wouldn't work. Now, this kind of technique where you're using essentially felt tips as an ink to draw a base that you then paint into can be used with pencil crayons and other things over the top of it, so we can go on to refine it with further work on top. Now, I'll pop it the right way round, and I'm going to take my paintbrush again, and I'm going to lose the white of the paper. To get rid of as much of that white as possible, because that is the thing that's making this look unresolved and unfinished. There are some artists called the Fauves who came after Van Gogh who do leave raw bits of canvas showing through, but it is canvas, and so it does look a little more finished than this. Oh, look, it's all running. My green is running now off that sunflower at the side. Dirty marks over there. I'm going to stylistically blend these in. So I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to work into a little bit more, maybe with another material. So this is the development stage of the project. We've learned a bit about colour theory. We've used some limited primary colours. We've applied some marks. We've done a drawing and interpreted something. Somebody that doesn't know Van Gogh's work might not know the reference, but most people would recognise this as being influenced by Van Gogh. And let that dry down for a mo. In the classroom at this point, I'm going to show you a painting that's in the school collection by the artist John Piper, who creates quite expressive work and then has a neat overdrawing into it. When I say neat, it's not overly controlled. I've now got a fine liner, and this is completely dry. I'm going to start drawing in the style of Van Gogh. Remember, at the very start of this, we looked briefly into the Van Gogh book. And I'm putting some marks into it. They're not heavy, clean lines, they are broken. Let me remind you what I mean by broken line. That's a clean line. That's a broken line. That's a weighted line. It's hard to see a weighted line with a pen, because it's normally more even than that. This is a weighted line. You see where it's lighter. So I am using the broken line, and I'm working into little bits of these flowers, drawing in petals, thinking about those directions that I can see in Van Gogh's work. Now remember, I am interpreting, so I'm trying things out. That looks a bit too blue for my liking. I want to make it a bit more green, so colour theory, put a bit of yellow over the top of it. So I'm going to go down now into this one. And in this one, I can see these little lines radiating from the centre. I said like a dandelion clock, you might know what I mean. This will take forever to draw those lines. Nope, I don't think it will. These are things that are playing in my head from having taught at this school for a very long time. I might think I want some closer towards the edge to make it look a bit darker, more defined. Is it even all over? I don't know. In your analysis, you might have a thought. That one was actually in front of this one. I'm not paying attention here, but I'm going to like treat this one in a slightly different way. Now, it still has characteristics of Van Gogh, but it has a style that is slightly different. See how I'm still working back into a felt tip? Now, you might not like the looseness of this work, or you might actually find this is quite liberating, quite fun. If you watched all the videos, I talked about the work of Lanyon, Peter Lanyon, how it'd be quite fun to make expressive work. Looking at that darker section in there. Think about how these lines are radiating. If we draw an arrow on the direction they're going, that sometimes helps you work out in your mind which way lines go. Right, I'm going to go on a bit fast forward and see where I get to. So there we have it, gang. I'm going to present this as my completed interpretation for this end of this project, which is inspired by Van Gogh Sunflowers. It shows some colour theory and mixing because I've only used primary colours and water to blend. I've created some overdrawing to create some volume and some mark making into it and give it some dynamic form. And there we have it, the outcome.